Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into an extraordinary project deep in the forest. A house with walls built entirely out of natural stones. Join me as we discover how this man transformed lifeless stones into a sturdy and beautiful home. Let's get started. He begins his journey by venturing deep into the forest, carefully surveying the area to find the ideal spot for his house. Once he finds a suitable location, he uses a saw to cut for short wooden posts, sharpening one end of each. These posts are then driven into the ground at four corners of the cleared space to mark the foundation's outline. Next, with a pickaxe, he starts digging a trench along the outline perimeter for the house's foundation. Using a shovel, he carefully removes the soil, preparing the base for the upcoming construction. After outlining the foundation, he builds a large fire near the house frame. With the flames crackling beside him, he picks up his shovel again and resumes digging the foundation trench. He works diligently, ensuring the trench follows the perimeter of the wooden markers he set earlier. With the trench for the foundation ready, he begins placing stones into it with careful precision. Starting with the larger stones, he lays them down first to form a sturdy base. Each stone is positioned securely, ensuring it interlocks with the others for maximum stability. Once the larger stones are in place, he moves on to the smaller ones. These are used to fill the gaps between the larger stones, creating a tightly packed and solid foundation. After completing this initial layer of the foundation, he pauses to light a small fire in the middle of the house's frame. Above the flames, he places a kettle to heat water. As the fire crackles gently, he returns to his work, focusing on positioning smaller stones to further reinforce the structure. He pours the hot water into a small cup and takes a moment to enjoy it. After a short break, he begins collecting more large stones, carrying them back to the house's foundation one by one. Next, he grabs a metal basin and carefully gathers small stones, piling them neatly on the clear ground inside the house frame. He measures the layout of the house walls. Then, he starts placing the large stones along the foundation trench, carefully positioning each one to form the first layer of the house's walls. Each stone is laid with great care to ensure it fits snugly with the others. Once the first row of stones is complete, he heads back into the forest, stopping at a small mound of soil. Using a digging tool, he collects earth, filling a container with the rich, compact soil, and carries it back to the house. To prepare a bonding mixture for the stones, he fetches a basin of water from a nearby stream and pours it over the soil. Returning to the walls, he uses the earthen mixture to reinforce the first row of stones. Next, he rolls a large, round log out of the forest and back to the house foundation. The log is heavy and requires significant effort, but its size and strength will make it a crucial part of the construction. Once he brings the log to the worksite, he begins clearing away any loose stones and debris near the first row of stones he just built. With the area cleared, he starts loosening the soil, shaping it into a slight incline. Carefully, he positions the log at the base of the incline and begins rolling it upward. He lifts it upright, standing it vertically on the foundation. Next, he saws 3 short wooden logs and positions them horizontally between the vertical logs at the bottom of the house's foundation, where the main door will be. Next, he empties a sack of earth onto the foundation floor, spreading it evenly across the surface. Afterward, he pours water over the earth and begins mixing them together, creating a thick, sticky paste. He returns to the wall he is building, gathering small stones and carefully filling the gaps between the larger stones. He scoops up the earth mixture with his hands and carefully presses it into the spaces between the stones. The sticky paste bonds the stones together, ensuring that the wall is stable and firm. As the wall grows, he continues adding more stones, building layer after layer. After securing the first part of the structure, he heads back into the forest once again, rolling a large log toward the house. The log is heavy, and it takes considerable effort to maneuver it through the forest and into the worksite. Once it's in position, he begins preparing the ground near the wall, carefully leveling and smoothing the surface to ensure the log will sit evenly. Once it is standing tall and stable, he grabs his shovel and begins to pour the earth mixture onto the foundation, evenly spreading it across the surface. The earth mixture forms a thick, sticky layer that will help bind the stones in place, ensuring the wall stays strong and secure. He then picks up more stones, continuing to build the walls layer by layer. Each stone is carefully placed and adjusted to fit the growing wall, and once positioned, he reinforces it with more of the earth mixture, creating a solid bond between each stone. As he works, the walls rise steadily, eventually reaching head height. This process repeats as he builds the walls higher, stone by stone, log by log. With each layer, he continues to reinforce the stones with the earth mixture, ensuring the structure is firm and stable. He heads back into the forest, where he finds a long tree that has fallen to the ground. With his saw, he cuts the tree into smaller, manageable pieces, each one the right length for his purpose. Once the logs are cut to size, he carries them back to the house site, carefully transporting the pieces over the uneven terrain. When he returns to the house site, he takes a long piece of wood and saws it into several shorter logs. Each log is measured and cut to the right length for his project. He places two of the short logs parallel to each other, ensuring they are aligned properly. After finishing the ladder, he carefully places it against the wall. With the ladder now securely positioned, he climbs up to the top of the wall, ready to continue his work. Once at the top, he begins placing more stones, carefully stacking them to extend the height of the wall. As the wall rises, he continues adding stones, ensuring each one fits tightly into place. Next, he gathers small stones and spreads them evenly across the top of the wall, filling any gaps and creating a stable surface. Afterward, he mixes a fresh batch of earth, adding water and fairly blending it to create a new, strong bonding mixture. He takes his shovel and begins scooping up the mixture, spreading it evenly over the top of the wall. This mixture will help reinforce the stones and ensure that the top of the wall remains solid and secure. After finishing the work on the wall, he heads back into the forest once again. This time, he saws several more large logs, carefully selecting the ones that will be most useful for his construction. Once the logs are cut, he rolls them down the hill, gathering them together at the edge of the forest. With the logs gathered, he begins the task of carrying them back to the house site. The logs are heavy, but he is determined, transporting them one by one through the forest. As he continues this process, he collects more and more logs, each one adding to his growing supply of materials. After gathering the logs, he carefully arranges them on top of the walls, lining them up neatly to form the base of the roof. The logs are placed tightly together, creating a solid foundation for the roof. Next, he digs a small hole near the wall, just below the surface of the ground. He places a few stones into the hole, securing them firmly. Then, he positions a tall log upright into the ground, placing it carefully in the hole to serve as a central support for the roof frame. Once the log is in place, he sets the ladder next to the wall and begins to climb. With each step, he ascends to the roof framework, ready to continue his work on building the structure of the house. Once on the roof frame, he begins the next step of construction. He carries small tubs of stones up the ladder, one by one, and pours the stones into the gaps between the wooden logs forming the roof structure. Next, he uses the earth mixture to secure the stones, applying it into the gaps to hold them firmly in place. This strengthens the roof and prevents the stones from shifting. After reinforcing the roof frame, he gathers a large sack and fills it with dry pine needles collected from the forest floor. He climbs back up and spreads the pine needles evenly across the roof frame, creating a natural insulating layer. To provide additional protection, he unrolls a tarp and lays it over the pine needles, smoothing it out to ensure it covers the entire roof. On top of the tarp, he places branches and leafy twigs, arranging them evenly to add another layer of insulation and camouflage the structure. Finally, he shovels a thick layer of earth onto the roof, spreading it carefully over the entire surface. Using a flat tool, he smooths out the soil, creating a flat, uniform surface. The completed roof is sturdy, insulated, and blends seamlessly with the natural surroundings. Next, he begins working on the front door. He constructs a rectangular door using wooden planks, aligning them tightly together to create a solid surface. Carefully, he secures the planks with crossbars to ensure the door is sturdy and durable. He fixes the door to the frame using strong hinges, ensuring it opens and closes smoothly. After mounting the door, he attaches a simple wooden door handle, shaping it to fit comfortably in the hand. Finally, he installs a lock on the door, ensuring the house is secure. As the day comes to an end, snow begins to fall gently from the sky, covering the ground in a soft white blanket. He packs his belongings into a backpack, preparing for a new adventure. Venturing deeper into the forest, he discovers a rectangular pit, its edges naturally carved by the elements. The pit is about knee-deep. Without hesitation, he climbs down into the pit, carrying a sturdy shovel. He begins clearing away loose debris and leveling the ground, carefully flattening the surface to prepare it for construction. Reaching into his backpack, he retrieves a saw and begins working on the nearby trees. Carefully selecting suitable ones, he saws them into manageable logs. Each cut is deliberate, ensuring the wood is the right size and quality for his construction needs. Once he finishes cutting, he carries the logs back to the edge of the pit, one by one, arranging them neatly in a pile. With the first batch ready, he ventures further into the forest to collect more logs, repeating the process until he has gathered a sufficient supply for the next phase of building. With the logs collected, he selects for large ones and lowers them carefully into the pit. These will serve as the foundation for the house. Arranging the logs in a rectangular shape, he ensures they are aligned properly to form the frame of the base. Using his saw, he cuts grooves into the ends of each log, carefully shaping them so they interlock securely. Piece by piece, he adjusts the logs, fitting them together like a puzzle. Once the logs are perfectly aligned, they form a sturdy and level foundation for the house, ready to support the structure that will rise above it. Next, he carefully saws along the top surface of the logs where they intersect. Using a chisel, he deepens and shapes the notches at the joints. After completing the grooves, he takes a hand drill and bores holes through the intersecting points of the logs. With the holes aligned, he inserts small wooden pegs into them, hammering them down firmly to lock the logs in place. He collects a large pile of leaves, choosing ones that are clean and dry. He carries the leaves to the rectangular frame of the house and spreads them evenly across the base. Next, he selects a sturdy log and carefully places it along one edge of the foundation frame. Using his chisel and saw, he carves precise grooves into both ends of the log. After ensuring the grooves are even and deep enough, he flips the log over and aligns it with the existing logs in the frame. Measuring each log with care, he cuts them to the same length using his saw. After cutting the logs, he carries them back to the construction site, stacking them neatly beside the foundation. He takes one log at a time and lays it across the frame. Before placing each log, he uses his tools to carve grooves into the ends, creating interlocking notches. He then flips the log over and fits it into place, ensuring it locks securely with the surrounding logs. Piece by piece, he continues this process, methodically filling the foundation frame with logs. Each log is placed snugly next to the others, forming a tight, seamless surface. He adjusts any uneven sections, trimming and refining the logs as needed to ensure the floor is perfectly level. As the last log is set in place, the floor takes shape, its surface sturdy and well supported by the interlocking design. He continues his work with unwavering focus, cutting more logs and meticulously carving grooves at both ends of each piece. As the logs pile up, he carefully selects and places them onto the foundation, ensuring that each piece interlocks perfectly. With every log placed, he drills small holes through the grooves and secures them with wooden pegs, locking the structure together. Step by step, the walls begin to rise, gradually taking form as he repeats this process, building the frame of the house one log at a time. For the front wall, he carefully designs two smaller sections on either side, leaving a rectangular space in the middle. This space will serve as the frame for the main entrance of the house. The front wall grows steadily, with the interlocking logs creating a sturdy barrier against the outside elements. The walls rise to waist height, each layer of logs adding to the strength of the house. He moves on to the side walls, where he continues the same process. With the front wall in place, he begins building the side walls by measuring and cutting additional logs. As he places the logs, he ensures that they align perfectly with the logs already in place. Again, he carves grooves into the ends of each log, interlocking them one by one, ensuring that the walls are secure and stable. He works his way up, carefully stacking the logs, always ensuring that each log fits tightly with the one below it. As the side walls grow higher, he begins to focus on the space for the windows. He gathers a collection of stones from around the area, carefully selecting each one. He then begins stacking the stones on either side of the house, extending the walls from the foundation all the way to the edge of the pit. The stones are stacked securely, one by one, each layer adding to the strength and stability of the structure. With each handful, he carefully stuffs the leaves into the spaces between the wooden logs and the edges of the pit, ensuring that every crevice is filled. He starts by selecting more logs, carefully measuring and cutting them to the right lengths to continue building upwards. He carefully carves grooves into each end of the logs and places them on top of the existing wall, ensuring they fit snugly into place. He heads into the forest again, searching for the right kind of soil. Once there, he pours water into the soil and begins mixing it thoroughly. His hands work with precision, kneading the wet soil to create a smooth, malleable consistency. After a few moments, he shapes the mixture into large, round balls, each one compact and sturdy. He also collects a few more stones, gathering them for use in the coming task. He begins by spreading the clay evenly inside the frame, pressing it down to form a solid, even layer. Once the clay foundation is set, he starts placing the stones, stacking them carefully to create the outline of a square. The stones fit perfectly into the clay, forming a sturdy base for the stove. After the frame is complete, he places a metal grate over the stone base, ensuring it's positioned securely. He continues to build the stove higher, adding more clay and stones to shape the structure. Slowly, the walls of the stove begin to rise, the clay molded around the stones, with each layer adding stability. Next, He heads into the forest once again, carefully selecting several short logs that are uniform in size. He spends some time inspecting each log to ensure they are straight and sturdy. Once back, he arranges the logs in parallel lines, carefully positioning them on the ground to form the base of what will become a simple bed frame. Using a strong piece of rope, he ties each log together securely, binding them tightly to ensure the frame is stable and won't shift or collapse. The structure gradually begins to take shape, resembling a basic but reliable frame, providing the foundation for the bed. Now, with the frame set, he moves on to the next part of the bed's construction. He selects a few semicircular wooden frames, which he carefully places across the top of the bed frame. The frames are spaced evenly apart, creating an arching shape along the top of the bed. He attaches each frame securely, using more rope, making sure they are tightly fastened to the main frame, providing additional structural integrity. Once the frame is solid, he begins gathering long grasses and plant fibers from the surrounding area. Returning to the house, he starts the process of weaving the long grasses into the semicircular frames. He carefully weaves the grass fibers through the wooden arches, creating a smooth, tight mesh. This weaving process takes time, as he works meticulously to ensure each strand of grass is placed evenly, providing even support across the bed. The intricate design of woven grass forms a natural, insulating layer that will help keep warmth in. The bed gradually becomes more solid, the intertwined fibers offering a soft but firm surface to sleep on. He begins by carefully placing several logs horizontally across the framework of the roof. He takes long strands of grass, carefully bundling them into tight bundles. He then ties one end of each bundle firmly to a small wooden pole, ensuring that each bundle is compact and stable. As he works, he continues adding more bundles of grass to the roof structure, layering them one on top of the other. After finishing the thatched sections, he carefully lifts each one and places it onto the wooden frame of the roof, layering them one by one. The 4 thatched mats are aligned to cover the entire surface of the roof, creating a thick, protective barrier against the elements. He carefully selects several new pieces and begins by cutting one large log in half, splitting it down the middle with precision. He then starts arranging other logs to create a rectangular frame. This frame will serve as the structure for the front door of the house. With the logs laid out, he takes a saw and begins to cut grooves into both ends of each log. These grooves will ensure the logs fit together securely when assembled. After the grooves are made, he uses a chisel to deepen and refine the notches, making sure they are clean and precise. Once the grooves are ready, he takes 2 additional small pieces of wood and carefully fits them into the notches. To secure the frame, he drives small wooden dowels into the notches, keeping everything in place. This creates the basic structure for the main door of the house. Next, he picks up a small log and begins to carve one end, shaping it into a rounded, smooth shape. He then drills holes into the top of the door frame, aligning them with the holes in the small log. These 2 pieces of wood will act as the hinges for the door. With the pieces aligned, he fits the log into the drilled holes, securing the door with the wooden pins. At last, the door is mounted and swings open and closed smoothly. It is a simple yet sturdy design, made entirely from the natural materials he has gathered from the forest. After completing the roof, he covers it with dry leaves, ensuring that it is thoroughly insulated from the elements. He starts a fire in the stove, using small twigs and dry wood to create a steady flame. From his backpack, he takes out a few potatoes, placing them on a plate. He begins mashing them until they are smooth and soft. Once the eggs are cooked, he places them on the same plate as the mashed potatoes. It's a hearty meal after a long day of hard work, and he sits in front of the stove, enjoying each bite. After finishing his meal, he takes a sip of water to wash it down, feeling content and grateful for the shelter he has built.